Well, good afternoon. It's not too long before the new year starts. It's getting close, isn't it? I thought I'd give my last broadcast on there this year, for the year rather. Oh, the reason I get back on here, every once in a while I get some squirrely sounding comments. And I read one this morning that said, Ray, you were sarcastic about your comments. And I think she is referring to the comment maybe about Jeremy doing some side saddle riding in his John Deere tractor. And it just kind of, I got a kick out of it. I guess a couple of things was that, number one, he's going down the wrong side of the road, obviously. And he's driving one-handed with his camera out. He's turned sideways in the tractor, more like he's trying to ride side saddle or something. It just, the whole thing was goofy. And disrespectful as well, going down the wrong side of a road on a small, it's a narrow road as it is. It's a blacktop. It's got fairly deep ditches on the side. And, you're talking some hazardous driving. I mean, not even talking about being against the law, okay? And it's all, in my opinion, is the only reason he'd be doing that. He's got a camera in his hand, and he is taking pictures, it looks like, over the fence. Because like I say, he's got his, phone, but he's got it pointed down there as if he's taking pictures. Or maybe a video, because just like the phone I've got an Apple phone, and it takes pretty darn good videos. Like, as a matter of fact, I could do as good a job with it as I can on a computer. But I choose not to drive one-handed going down a road to take videos. And I don't know, maybe it's a thing of a different generation that they do. I suspect money has something to do with it. Certainly, there's a little bit of obsession in there, because it's done on almost a daily basis. Whenever this guy happens to be there, being a snowbird, he's not there all the time, but enough. And the big reason for the fence was to afford the family a little bit of privacy. There were so many complaints by, quite frankly, that person that liked to report on how big a mess it was, and it stunk, and all, I mean, there was just all kinds of stuff. And other people have went there and said, we don't smell anything out of the ordinary for this area, number one. And in fact, when you live in those areas, that's kind of like, years ago, a lot of years ago, I moved to Louisiana, and when I first moved down there, you get a certain odor that I would consider more of an odor of the swamp. It's a little bit of a decaying odor, but very quickly you get used to it and you don't smell it any longer. I was down there several years and didn't really have a problem with it. And when I moved to Texas, I didn't even realize it was gone. And I did have to travel back and forth from Texas to Louisiana on a regular basis. I was involved with a nuclear plant over there that was built along the Mississippi, and there was different times where I conducted inspections and training over there. But like I say, that was a lot of years ago. But the main thing is that, I'm looking at a situation there, and all of you guys out there, you got to kind of chuckle to yourself, because we've seen a very minor thing that just grew, and it's responses to and actions to actions, a reaction to another reaction, and it grew into what it is today as a federal case. But more than that, it drew in a lot of innocent people who wanted to get in on it by invitation. And, you know, you say, well, what do you mean invitation? Well, quite frankly, let's say you look on here, I've got just a few thousand followers. It's not a big channel, it's very small. But when I pick this up and I start talking about on here, it is an open invitation to people come in and listen to what I've got to say. And the subject happens to be Otter Creek and the situation between two neighbors. So here I've invited you in without actually saying it's an invitation. But I want you to understand something. Once I broadcast over the public like this, it is an invitation because this is entertainment, and that is an automatic invitation for people that want to come in and be entertained. So what happens when you get a huge channel out there and all of a sudden they see people join in, and all of a sudden you've got a lot of viewers coming on there and listening, get a lot of thumbs up or thumbs down. It don't matter whether they're up or down, by the way, it's counted. And you realize it may be a gold mine. And in fact, I think there's a lot to that. And most people look at it and say, you know, this whole thing is so silly. We're running around with our phones, holding them up in the air, just as if we were at a rock and roll concert or some kind of a concert. We're holding these phones up, trying to get the best picture. And everybody gets on board, and so everybody's holding their cameras up. No matter where you go, you see this camera facing at you. And, you know, when the hair goes up in the back of your head and you look around, you don't see anything. There's probably a hair behind, or phone, somebody behind a bush. I'm telling you, it's gotten to be that silly, and it's obvious. And people get all wrapped up into it. Not any different than the comment that come on there saying I was sarcastic in my review. And it had to do, I think, I really do believe it was because of the description I gave of Jeremy. It was comedic because of the fact I've never seen a grown man ride side saddle before on a tractor or a horse or anything else. You got to say it kind of tickled me a little bit too, because I try to get a little bit of something positive out of things that are so negative if I can. And that was what I came up with that yesterday or day before yesterday when I came on here and said, hey, you know what I seen on a video. And he was in public, you know, the road's on the public, it's perfectly, there's no problem in taking a video like that and putting it on, you know, publishing it if I wanted to publish it on here. So, and it happened to be the security cameras, I think, picked it up, and that's, like I say, it's perfectly legal to show them. And it's perfectly legal to have a opinion of what's going on. But more than that, when the comments roll in, and I do get a kick out of some of them, and some of them, I wonder why the people make comments like that when, you know, I don't go on their channel and I don't make fun of them. If I'm going to do it, I'll come on here and say this is what I feel. And if the commentator, the person I take on there, if they don't like it, they can always get on there and post a comment and we can talk about it. And I may or may not post any more about it. That's up to me. And if they're out in public, chances are they're going to be seen. But the other thing is, you know, there is a protection order of Miss Preston's where she can't, and John, I believe, that they have to stay 500 feet away from Mr. Hales. And it's kind of hard in a town that's only got 100 people because you have a common post office. You know, mail isn't delivered out to the homes. You have to go up to the post office. And this particular person, quite frankly, admittedly, he says he's got cameras up there that show that place over there, that show Miss Preston's and John's place. And it can be somewhat disturbing if you're living there because your life is out to the public, and it's being done without permission, and it makes you a little paranoid. And it's been going on for a number of years now. And with this protection in place, it is a one-sided deal, apparently. Mr. Hales, he can do anything he wants, or at least he's acting that way at this point. I don't know what all the legalities around this protection order when they're in place, if he can violate them, but they can't. You would think it would be a two-way street as far as he has to stay away from them if they're there first, and it's up to them to be there. But that's not the way he's reading it, and he's actually took it to court, won, and John Cook was fined because he was walking along the road with a walker, just had gone through a knee operation, and this guy drives up and says, 10 feet, 10 feet. You know, I mean, what's he going to do? He's looking at a small ditch on the side there. And you certainly, I don't know about you, but when you have bad knees or you just went through a knee operation, it's a little hard to negotiate a ditch. And this guy had got as close as he could over there to John, that John's walking down the road, blacktop road. And the reason he's saying is that he violated it is because John was yelling at his significant other on the other side of the fence there. And Mr. Hales claims it was him, that he was yelling at him. And he's not allowed to converse with him. Now, I know this really sounds silly, and you wouldn't think that it could ever be awarded that way, but that's the way this particular protection order is. So you're in this small town with what is it, a dozen streets in it maybe, and they have to be careful what street they're on, because if they get to walking out there, if they can't get 500 feet distance from this guy pretty quickly, well, like that video showed, this guy's yelling at him, and of course John's yelling at his significant other, and this judge says, "Oh, yep, I see that they're in violation. They were." Oh well, and quite frankly, during the court session, even though they had film and proof, otherwise, other than what was shown to the judge, they weren't allowed to show it during the trial because it wasn't submitted prior to the trial. And it's kind of, well, I don't know. When I think about how unfair it can be, not everybody, it's a civil matter on this at that point, although there can be a citation on it. It was investigated, these different charges, by the Sheriff's Department and found to be invalid on 4 counts. And yet the judge up there in Ohio, which is another state, I don't know if they don't recognize that or didn't see the paperwork or if it wasn't allowed to be shown. Whatever it is, you had an innocent party that was charged and fined for something they weren't guilty of. And you could almost look at it as the T wasn't crossed or the I wasn't dotted. I mean, it's a technicality to make somebody guilty that is not. It's very unfair. And because of situations like that, different outfits similar to mine came on here and said, hey, these people need a helping hand. And it was offered, and as you can see, this mass, like a blob, spread out and has attacked each channel that has taken up the call for Ms. Preston and Mr. Cook. And along the way, I noticed, and I happened to see a case similar to this, okay? There's a correlation. And Miss Preston has been turned in between 27 and 28 times to the Child Protective Service down there, and came out with a no citations and no recommendations by any kind, and been able to go on their way. And no repercussions have come into all these people, because at this point, apparently, either they haven't been tied together to see what is the common bond that makes these many calls go in. And everybody would have you believe that, well, that Miss Preston is getting away with something. But in fact, on one of the occasions, they all took the urine tests to test for drugs, and everybody was clean, including the little girl, who was 4 years old at the time. And it makes you wonder, well, how much do people go through, and how long does Child Protective Service go through this? Because over a year and a half's time, you get that many calls, or maybe it's 2 years, time goes by. But it's a lot of calls, and it averages out more than one a month. And even on the West Coast, now you're talking about Florida's in the East Coast, and the call comes from the West Coast, California area, to the protective services out there of complaining about it. Now, within the last couple of weeks, there was posted on there one of these phone calls, which was released probably through a FOIA act, which is the sunshine law that allows these different calls to be monitored, and the public can pay for the release of those so that they can bring them out and have them over the internet. But anyway, it was a phone call to the Sheriff's Department wanting assistance so that when the CPS goes out there, that they can go with them or meet them at the property, which was done. And it was left open-ended, as if the CPS had called the Sheriff's Department on Michelle. And in fact, the reason they were called is because protocol says that if something goes into CPS and it was reported as somebody either hitting somebody or there was physical involvement at the time, and the CPS, if there's something physical going on, even though they don't know it for sure, but because of the call, the protocol says they have to have an officer with them to protect all parties involved. And all parties means everybody, including when they were called on, to make sure everything does not get to that point. And they have a way to get on site, because that's the call they got. They're going to be able to get in and do their inspection. But why was it put out there and left open like that without the ending? And I think it is, here again, it's my opinion, the reason the end wasn't told of the findings of what went on is because your imagination can run away with you when you hear that, but there's no end. They don't tell you that there was no finding. And they don't tell you the protocol that CPS has to go through should a call come in telling them there was physical atrocities going on. When in fact, when they got out there and it was investigated, there was no atrocities going on. There was no physical acts being conducted. Now, in modern terms, you've heard the word swatting. I hope you've heard that, right? That would be, in my estimation, considered swatting. Now, that being open-ended, that makes you think something's going on that isn't, but the whole public picks that up. Even though they don't know there's an end to it, it's repeated. But it's repeated that it positively something happened, that either this little girl got hurt or there was a fight going on or something that endangered this little girl, when in fact it was unfounded. Whoever sent that in, it's just like a swatting call. They didn't know anything was going on, but they reported it as if there was, which required a call to the sheriff's department. Now, I hope I explained that out. And in fact, it would be a swatting call. So let's say there's 27 calls that have went in. So there has to be a common bond there. There's something common there that says, what is the tie? So I started looking back, and I noticed that one of the people that has a channel out there can bring things up every so often, and all of a sudden, calls get called in because somebody thinks very well, hey, there's something going on out there. Or it's an unsanitary conditioned place out there. And it gets inspected and it's back. But it's not always the same person doing it that's making the calls, right? And you know, the calls are recorded, and anything that has a number, it goes down there with it. And if it's a physical abuse of some kind, then the sheriff's department also has it. And as a matter of fact, I think that person probably got it from the sheriff's department rather than the CPS, but I'm not positive about that. I'm just telling you the way I seen it, my opinion on it, and what I heard on the internet. So what constitutes that many calls? What ties it together? Well, by law, if something like that is going on, and it is done repetitiously, so how do you look at it to see what's going on? Well, I looked at another channel, and the RICO law actually can be tied into that if you can find a common denominator where it goes back to particular, maybe one person in one way or the other. Untangle the whole mess, this spaghetti mess. And so how do you do that? Is the CPS going to put up with that for a long time? And what does it take to get the records released and get all these phone numbers out there? Because the phone numbers can be traced. You understand that. Even a cell phone can be traced to the owner. Fairly easy. And the RICO Act is, if it is an organized effort to put a person in problem. And then you look at it as being a swatting type of deal when you in fact are calling out that it's physical. So now we got swatting and we have the RICO Act going on. So I started looking into it a little further, and I said, well, how can the proof be brought about that way? Well, there's several things. Let's look at it as a cell phone. Okay, the cell phone can generate the tower it's being utilized on. But more than that, most cell phones, let's say it's an Apple phone, and let's say the person has a computer. The phone, a lot of times, shares apps with the computer. And it does share it with Facebook, Twitter, and a thing called TikTok, and Reddit, and Rumble, and all those. They all have a sharing app, and a lot of people don't realize it, and they don't know where to find it. And you can just about get rid of the apps pretty easy because by law, the United States requires it, so it can be done, except for one. So if you want to find it out, TikTok, that app stays up no matter what. If you belong to TikTok, it is there. And it is embedded into all of things out there. There's social programs to include Google, which comes right back to our computers. When in fact it gets to the point where the legal system, the law system, decides to get involved in it through the system of warrants, now you can go ahead and get back through some of these systems because it becomes an act for the federal government. It's no longer a local issue through your county or anything else. It is FBI when it is considered RICO Act. So all those people that got involved with that particular entity now have left themselves open to such an investigation if it happens somewhere down the line. And they only have to get one tie back to get the investigation going. And maybe it's already started. I don't know. I do know this, that there was one of the channels out there did it while they were on their program, okay? And they did tie their program back to, on the show at the time, to another person with a channel. And they did that on the air, and thousands of people got to see it. They got to see what was going on and what this guy said about how he came about to make this call. And even admits his participation in it and how he got there. So that's your first tie going back. Now, there's been others that have been along there, including the one that was claiming a physical act was going on, where the CPS, that call that you guys seen not too long ago, a couple of weeks, maybe at the most, maybe a week, from another YouTube channel that put it out here for everybody to see. And then the different ones picked it up, and of course they spread it out, and more people see it. I would say that in the last 2 weeks, probably 300,000 or 400,000 easily have heard that phone call. And of course, they've expressed different opinions about it all along here. And then how does it get mixed out there? Well, it seems Facebook had quite a following on there too, which I didn't realize. I don't have Facebook, but other people do that converse back. So when you get all these people going at the same time, it's pretty easy to say, okay, where did this come from? Who started it? Like I say, I looked at a similar case, and one of these days, if I can get permission, I'm going to try to post it on here. I don't have permission on it right now. But I would like to bring the video on if I can, or if I can get one of my friends to do it that's more tech at it than I am. Although I think I can probably, not a big problem. If I have permission, I think I can post it on here. I was surprised at the similarities in how easy it was to prove a RICO act in harassment, with the harassment end of it. I didn't even think it was possible, quite frankly, but it is. And it happened to be a neighborhood dispute that started. So it did have a lot of what this case is, except for this case, the one party is a lot bigger channel, more influence, and it really spread very quickly. And I'm wondering, that should make it a lot easier. And with the number of calls to CPS, now I'm beginning to wonder how much paperwork can be gathered through FOIA and how open it is through the different legal parts, how many warrants have to be posted to get all the information, how much paperwork there is. And I'm thinking it's probably already started, because something so simple shouldn't take so long to get it enacted, if you see what I'm talking about. Now, for those comments I was talking about earlier, where somebody said I was being, they actually thought I was out of line and being a smart aleck and everything else. And sometimes if you try to put a little comedy in your talks, and I know they figured I'm just being a sarcastic jerk or whatever. Actually, I was trying to do a little comedy in there along with it so that people remember things much easier that way. But in fact, you know, my opinion is that the act of what he was doing on that tractor is malicious. It really is. It's disturbing to people that it's happening to. And they've went through enough in the last couple of years. I don't think they deserve to have this keep on going like this. And they don't go over there and do the same thing. Now, I know there's going to be some stuff put up and all that. Every week, somebody's coming up with, oh, we got something new. And usually it goes back to a year and a half ago or a year, whatever. It's seldom new. Oh, this person's got this, and that one's going that way. And they act and get all dramatized and get all their followers up in arms. And, well, we're going to do something new on there. Well, I guess we'll just have to see. Well, on that note, I'm going to call it a day today, but I thought there was no reason not to at least share a little bit of information that I had looked at out there on the internet, informed opinion on, and seen the correlation of the happenings of a neighborhood dispute and how far it's gotten out of hand, and how it's almost like a bunch of kids getting in there and who can throw the rock the furthest, the hardest, the biggest, whatever. But the other thing is, too, I look at it and it's almost like a bunch of vultures in there for the final feast. And it's not something that is easily digested by a person that has good sense. And it seems like the older you get, the less you want to tolerate things like that, because it just doesn't, it really doesn't make sense. And in this case here, it either is monetary or the person is obsessed, one of the two. It can't be anything else. It's not being done just for the fun of it. And when is enough enough? You tell me. If you were in Michelle and John's shoes, I'm sure you would have said enough is enough within a month or two, because it is enough. You know, there's only so much of it you can stand. When a person has a protection order against them and they realize when you live in such small vicinity to each other and you're trying to avoid each other, it isn't very easily done, especially if there's only maybe a dozen or 20 streets at the most in town. And you have a common place you have to go on a daily basis called the post office. And the nearest decent store, big store, is probably going to be a Walmart very close. And so when you go to groceries, you know what's going to happen. And the other thing is the advantage of a person that has their cameras on where you're at, okay? So they can tell whenever you're coming and going. They can actually, let's say, follow you to that place. And they show up very quickly, and then they call the sheriff's department on you. You know, when this thing started out, it started out right off the bat with the new guy in town getting into it with the neighbors that he'd actually bought the property from. And, you know, it came down to an invitation for physical assault if needed be. And I thought that was kind of poor taste. And in fact, the one was upset with Jeremy, and he even posted because he felt justified, but he had knocked on the door to make sure that woman knew that she was on his property and that their junk was spilled over on it. And I mean, he became very obnoxious about it. And that woman's son said, hey, that's enough is enough. And Jeremy was ready to go to battle with him. And anybody that's had their mother, I guess she fell out of the bed or something, getting up and hurt her arm or got hurt in some way, trying to get to the door. It would be upsetting to you. I mean, he posted it. Jeremy posted this on his channel. So when you look at that, that's right off the bat. And you wonder, when you're new in town and you start expressing yourself in a very aggressive manner, why people don't like you. Well, I guess that's as good example as I can give you. You have people that have been there for generations, and then you step all over them. And it doesn't matter whether you're right or wrong, it's how you handled it. And so it doesn't endear you to a lot of people. Now, some will always get on your side because, hey, they've had problems maybe with some of the same people you did, and you have an automatic peanut gallery following you around. And if you have a few bucks and pennies in your pocket, and they hear the jingle, they get a little closer to you. They might even get their nose colored brown. They get that close, don't they? But that stuff don't last forever. And blood is thicker than water, you know that. And so in a small town, a lot of people are related. And when it comes down to relations sticking together, eventually they usually do. And I've always, and I have lived in small towns most of my life, but I've always found a way to get along and try to realize how close the ties are. The smaller the town, the tighter the ties. And you don't know it till you've been there a while, but it shows through eventually. I feel sorry for Otter Creek down there that they've had to go through this, and even changing the name of their town. I mean, you talk about being negative or derogatory. I guess, yeah, some people think that's cute, and it's not. I don't know. If you people feel that way, maybe it's a different generation than mine. We had respect for our forefathers that settled each area, and the names are almost sacred of these little villages and towns, especially the smaller ones. They were usually named after a person. As this particular place is after some like river otters or whatever, so it's Otter Creek, and there's nothing wrong with that. But when you start making names out that are derogatory in nature and meant to be that way, and you start calling the people in that town odd, then you've spread it to the people themselves. And so it cuts deep, and it's hard to get rid of the nomenclature, because forever people that have got it in their mind will say that. And in fact, it's hard to not say that way, because you listen to a few of them, you get hypnotized into it, and it's called brainwashing. Well, I can't think of anything more to say today. I forgot to yell out to Darwin Goodson out there. Darwin, I love listening to your channel. You're a wise man, and I get a kick out of you. And yes, I know we get to see each other in different chats out there, and I'm glad you're there. Looks like you're posting on a daily basis. I think you're having some pretty good fun out there. So here's to you. And I know that we probably are two of the older people that are out there in some of them chats. Well, let's see. Oh, yeah. With that, I hope you have a good time tonight. It is New Year's Eve. And I look forward to seeing, or at least listening to a lot of you next year. And I hope one of these days, soon, we can put this whole thing to rest and we can just talk. Just have some good times. You okay? So let's think towards more of those lines where we find reasons to be cordial. There, that's the word I needed. I almost forgot it. And there's a few people on here that absolutely disagree with me, but they're cordial when we talk. So I guess I do like those people regardless of their opinion. I did have somebody get on there and say I was evil too. And I just picked that up today. It's like, what? I had complimented somebody out there I said, they're a good singer or whatever. I had complimented them over 5 months ago. And somebody got on there and had to make a remark behind mine about how evil I was. I thought, wow, thanks for the recognition, but somebody, boy, there's a lot of sick minds out there. I got an idea that person, their life must really suck. But here's to you, and hope you have a good year. And I hope this last year was decent for you. And may God bless all of you out there. And let's Well, let's meet back up next year, okay? With that, as John would say, ta-ta, everybody.